Hi everyone, nice to see you in such a big number here in front of me. I don't see you really well because the light is shining down here on me, but I will try to. I wanted to have some interaction with the people, but maybe that not be a best idea now because I don't really see you back there. But anyway, today I'll be talking a bit about data monetization and about how to use open data in that regards. And some experiences that we had in our region or our wider region with utilizing open data. I hope you will find this interesting and maybe think about using that data also for your purposes, for your business, for your industries. But let's start at the very beginning. I will not be talking anything about SaaS, so you might know SaaS, what SaaS does and what SaaS is good at. But I will rather focus on the experience that we have in this area. So let me start with data first. Some say data is a new currency. Some say it's a new oil or new gas. Some say it's new gold. Some say even it's a bacon or tofu. Others might even, from ironical perspective, say it's a new Bitcoin. Regardless of what you name this or which analogy you're using, it's more or less apt for something that is hard to define, something that's not ready for, headline term. In modern enterprises, whatever metaphor you're using is appropriate for data, regardless of the industry that you prefer or in the company that you're using it for. The data should and can be used to derive new measurable value. So there are modern data innovators, they actually approve and see the value that is lying in the data, but not just from data assets themselves, rather from the ways on how this data can be used and how this can be exploited in terms of monetizing. So deriving value from data is in that regards not just the tangential to operations, it's actually a core to a new business model. So let's look at the picture that we have behind me. It's an example from Formula One, so I'm sure you all know about that. So we have race cars. Race cars have hundreds of sensors. So while being on the path, on the racetrack, they emit data back to their data centers with all this, lots of information about how the car is performing and what adjustments are on the car. Now, there's been this research done on one particular day in life of racing, and all the data that has been generated in that one particular day, just one day, was 243 terabytes. So all the teams racing generated 243 terabytes of data. That is, if you compare this to a real life, that is approximately the size of a US Library of Congress. So you can imagine how much data is just generated in one day compared to the Library of Congress having been all these historical books and literature and stuff being there. So, on the other hand, those are the data coming from the race teams. On the other hand, we have people taking photos, publishing data on the internet, on Facebook, and they have created on that particular day 2.4 terabytes of mobile data. So that's more or less 1% of that. So we can imagine how much data is generated in different, so this is just one example. Now you can imagine how much data is out there on a daily basis. And you can only imagine now what it means to actually now work on hundreds of terabytes of data in order to derive some new conclusions. What modification needs to be done on the particular car in order to gain a particular part of a second. Might that be enough of improvement for the team to win? Maybe. So the best ones, the fastest ones who do the best analysis would actually enable the racer behind the steering wheel to actually win that game. So it's not just a good performance behind the wheel, the driver, but it's actually the whole team behind him who works on all this data and try to improve the performance of the car on the track. So if we conclude that, if we say what data monetization is in that regard, data monetization is actually a successful data transformation. Now, if we look from a broader perspective, where we focus on deriving new value from that data. But now, this was just one example. Now we see that we have all this big data, but now let's focus a little bit on what data monetization actually means. Let's look at the simple example. But before going into an example, what data monetization should be bringing, there is something when we generate value. So that's for organizations and different industries. It should create one of the three, at least one of the three KPI measures. Either it brings value to the company, it saves money for the company, or it brings some additional, could be intangible results to the company. Now let's look at the simple example. I know I've taken an example from a sport that I'm quite sure that you are familiar with it because you're a nation of sportsmen and very successful professional sportsmen. So I've taken an example from tennis. I love this sport. I'm sure most of you also. Let's see how the data monetization works for this case. If we, at the beginning, of course, we have to set up a strategy or set the goals and objectives. Let's say that we want to improve tennis players' strength, power, consistency, and strategy. Now, for example, let's focus just on tennis racket at the very beginning. Should I put something else up here? Is Babolat the right brand for the, let's say, Serbian market? Is Nole playing Babolat or is he playing something else? Yeah, I think I should have changed this to hat. I think Nole is playing hat. Well, anyway, let's assume that we have a tennis racket. Tennis racket has a lot of sensors on it. So while we're playing, this sensor transmits data back to a mobile platform, and then analysis is done on that platform. Now, integrating these sensors and the feedback that is coming from that side, we'd like to determine the strength of impact, the point of impact, spin, the way the racket is moving, is it twisting, is it turning, and of course number of forehand and backhand shots. Now, having all that data in one platform, we can actually analyze and visualize the results and try to enable, so what the result is now, is we want to enable the player, the person that we want to kind of improve is to optimize his power versus spin. We want to adjust the stroke and we want to improve their shots for future performances. So in that regards, we want to improve and compare the results with the existing players and the professional players in that regard. So on one side, we improve the techniques of a person, and the other side, we actually have an insight of how the professional players are doing that sport. So that's one simple example of how we can monetize something that is just using a racket. Now, that was a simple example from a sports profession. Now let's look into, are there other use cases or other industries where we can monetize data? Yes, the answer is yes. Actually, there are many data monetization use cases out there for each and every industry and for each and every domain that we can exploit and use. So if we start from banking, for example, there's millions, hundreds of tens of millions transactions every day when people and organizations transfer money between the accounts. So do we want to learn as a bank what's the purposes and what are the patterns behind those transactions? Or if we look at telecommunications, telecommunications need to work a lot on their networks. So we want to establish smart networks, or we want to offer smart geolocation services. If we look a retailer, for example, a retailer should be tracking the path, the footsteps of their customers in the stores to know where customers are spending most of their time, and based on that, do some strategy on how to plan the categories within the stores. Or they should improve their contextual prepositions to a customer, so be more personalized. Or on the other hand, they would like to find the best locations where to build a new store, for example. On the manufacturing side, manufacturers are producing things, so they need some parts from other manufacturers. So do we want to establish a smart supply chain, which is quite important, to have the demand satisfied just in time? Then we have, for example, government, municipalities, something like that. So we have smart cities, smart homes, smart energy grids, smart malls. Then if we move forward to shopping malls, sports arenas. So do you want to do something about smart parking? So I could continue going on from different industries having different use cases on that. So that means every industry, we have seen now, I just talked to Marco before actually starting this presentation. Marco, who had a presentation before me, he said that they were looking for a data science company in Croatia which would have hospitality background knowledge, and they couldn't find one. So I asked him after that in the corner, I asked him, did you plan to have, do you want to now, you've learned something, you have the knowledge which is not obviously not on the market. Do you want to monetize that thing? And he said, yes, we're starting that activity already. We want to expand our knowledge. We want to do a startup. We want to expand it throughout, not just within our region, Adriatic region, but really to be a global player on that side. So you can think about that. So there is opportunity. You just need to really think about it. I have to speed up a bit. I think maybe just a few things on business models that are important for data monetization, or where the opportunities lie. The first question, so we learned that there's big data out there, there's a lot of data, the data come in through different streams, either that be streaming, unstructured, structured, and so on. But the fundamental question that we should be asking ourselves when we start data monetization is, where is my money going to be coming from? Or what is the business model behind our data monetization strategy? Those are fundamental things that we need to discuss and put into frames when we start thinking about all the possible alternatives. Now, when we think about organizations, typically think about selling data, are associating, when we mention monetization, they are associating that with selling data or selling services that are related to data. I know from experience that selling just data or services is not an easy task, especially for an organization whose business is based on that data. And in particular for new organizations that are new to this business, that means they have to deal with a lot of things that would probably be new to them. So we heard about GDPR today, so regulation, privacy, underlying technology, pricing, marketing, sales. There's a lot of things that we need to be thinking about and exploring and checking and validating before we actually put the data monetization strategy in place. Now, anyway, when we talk about selling, that typically refers to external monetization. External monetization can be divided in two pillars. One is more or less concerned with smart consumer services. This is typically focused on personalized, location-based, contextual, real-time offers or services for improving customer lifetime value and customer loyalty. Now, either that be smart advertising, smart commerce, smart media, loyalty, brand loyalty programs, and so forth. On the other hand, we have smart production services where we want to improve by bartering the data, external production, so providing cloud services or data as a service services, or we want to improve or enhance infrastructure-oriented services. So that means, as I mentioned before, smart homes, smart energy grids, smart shopping malls, something like that. On the other side, we have internal monetization. Internal monetization is not concerned with selling any data, but is rather focusing on utilizing customer, product, and operational insights that are derived and gleaned from internal data. These internal insights, these insights could actually benefit the company in order to improve their key business and operational processes, could reduce different types of risk like compliance or security risk, could work on so it could identify potential new revenue streams or could even enhance customer engagement. Now, we have another two pillars down here. Those are quite nicely related to the ones on the external side. So we are again dealing with smart customer relationship. This is the similar thing that we have on the external side where we talk about smart consumer services. It's just that we do this on our internal people or on internal processes, internal alignment. So we want to have smart offer management again, and we want to have a better customer experience. Again, smart processes nicely relates to the smart production services on the external side, where we are focusing on operational excellence. So we want to have smart supply chains, smart networks, smart call centers, and then operational analytics, which is concerned with HR analytics or fraud or other types of risks and stuff like that. Okay, now this was an introduction section, but now let me go a bit deeper into what we have done in the past few years on data monetization area. So a couple of years back, we have started this alliance of 6 different industry-leading companies in one particular country. So we gathered the biggest bank, the biggest telco operator, the biggest media company, the biggest insurance. So that made one big alliance. There were a couple of objectives that we tried to follow. The first objective was to actually generate a unique data platform where these partners would bring in their own customer data. This data would be merged and some learnings would be done on top of that. So we would try to get the hyper profiles of the overall population which would be in there, and then use this hyper profiling to actually enhance each of the partner back with this information. So the learnings that would be done on the overall portfolio of customers and information would then be pushed back to every partner. That was one or two objectives. And the third objective was to actually create a service that would actually monetize our learnings and offer that as a model, a business to customer kind of service model. Now, we had, so that was the first couple of objectives, and then there were some others that we want, as this would progress, we would want to establish a further set of use cases that would deal with smart advertising, so having channels that would be driven by this entity in the middle, and then have something like multi-brand loyalty programs, e-wallet, and stuff like that. We did also some estimations. What would that mean? How much revenue would be expected if this is put in place? As the time went by, so we did that. We started the project, and I have to admit it was a very, very, very tough project. You can imagine that when two companies merge and they try to collide the operational systems and information and data together, it's a nightmare. Even with two companies merging, it's a nightmare. Now you can imagine 6 companies with different expectations, different data structures, different data quality, now bringing all the data together and merging that. That was a total nightmare and total disaster. Now, at some point, we were about to stop this project, so we had to reduce the scope or change the scope of the project. And we were thinking what we should do actually to continue that project and to really bring it to where we want it to be. So that took roughly about 1 year of time till we get to this point, and then we started thinking about bringing in the open data. I will talk about it a bit later, but just to conclude this, once we did this, when we stopped and introduced new concepts, then we were able to deliver this project to the end. Some customers were actually satisfied with the results and some were not. So their expectation was higher as opposed to what we were able to deliver with, merging all this stuff together. Now, after this project was concluded and we did some work on open data, it was also included in this one, we decided to actually pursue with the open data initiative. So we started with a new solution. The new solution which wouldn't have any alliance. There would be no partner. The goal and objective would more or less still be the same. So we would like to increase customer insight, and we would like to, at the end, again, offer the services that are based on new customer insights. So to enhance business data with new learnings. Now, so there's 4 points to this system. The first one, of course, is bringing in the open data. What is open data? Open data is a concept, is a term where people are bringing in, so you have access to data that is available out there, and you can use it for your own purposes. You can use it, you can change it, and there are no copyright or any other legal constraints on that. The term itself, the psychology behind this term has been around for quite a while. Merno in 1940s did a thesis on traditions of science where he discussed this term, but actually the term itself began its popularity when with the rise of internet and World Wide Web, and especially with the introduction of open data government initiatives. So that's when it started picking up its tension. Now, so we collected this open data. I will talk about that a bit on the next slide, but just to lead you through the solution. So we get the data, we merge it from different sources, and then based on that data, we create features, and then features we use to derive a new metric system which is able to describe and combine components of consumer lifestyle. Now, this metric system can later be used to enrich customer data coming from other organizations with customer lifestyle profiles. And the fusion process is actually based on socio-demographic and economic factors, plus some business-related features. The last thing that I want to mention is the benefits that this solution is bringing is it can actually deduce the needs and attitudes based on the consumption and based on the behavior of a particular customer or a particular profile, which is very important thing because this is something that actually you can use to build your marketing strategy on. So you can do the positioning on product based on the learnings that are deduced from here. So you can actually learn what your customer base looks like, to which population out of the overall market population it belongs, and based on that you can do a real targeted positioning of a particular product or service. The third point that I want to mention here is, of course, if you have an offer out there, you want to really check whether you have addressed the right population and then align the messaging and the strategy if the results are not as what you have hoped for. So let's look at the open data. So what we collected was more or less survey data coming from so 3 types of data, or 3 types of research surveys. Survey on aspects of daily life, household expenditure survey, and survey on the balances of Italian families. So this was obviously done on the Italian market. So that was roughly 700 different questions in that three surveys. Out of these 700, we managed to generate nearly 100 features, which were then used to deduce this metric system for psychographic profile or lifestyle profile of a particular segment. We based our approach on AIO model. This is a model that is typically or is used by marketing people to actually learn about customer characteristics, and this is based on so this model is then used to generate the individual psychographic profile. Activities, so these are the daily activities of a person, daily habits, and then you can see which features actually belong into this area. Then you have interests, so interests are something that what people want to do, what they are interested in, what drives them, what motivates them in their daily lives. And then there's opinions. Every one of us has different opinions about different subject matters, from politics to government to sports to education and so on and so forth. So these were the 3 main key areas, how we splitted the features that were generated up here. And then we, of course, used the socio-demographic data, which was also present in that area. Now, the way we approach this, we didn't take a traditional approach to IOM, but we, of course, used a more advanced analytical approach. So we kind of built on a hierarchical way. So we started with subcategories, and we did the classification in each particular subcategory. And then we used the factors that were result. So for each category, we created a 2-dimensional kind of classification. And then we used the factors for the next phase. In the next phase, we kind of gathered all the factors from one hierarchy below, and then we did another classification. So we did so you can imagine we did some classification here, and then we merged it, and we did some classification here, and then at the end we took all the categories together and created a psychographic profile of a particular lifestyle. This is how it looks like. So these are the 2 dimensions, so the classification on a particular category. So we have 4 categories, 4 different classification types. And then if we combine all that view together, then we got to this psychographic profile or lifestyle the way we call it. So it has a nice visualizations on top of that, so you can actually track and see how different profiles look like and what they can be used for. Just 2 more slides. Now that we've had this metric system in place, we want to now do the proper and provide that system for other customers as well. So this is the estimation process. So if somebody brings in his own customer data, those customer data would be fused with the learnings from our system, and then the results would be pushed back to the customers with all this enhanced information that has been generated on the overall population within our system. The good thing about is that you can actually, by having this additional information, you can actually see and deduce how your population in your organization looks like compared to the overall market population. So we can really see which part of population is in your customer base. And then based on that, you can start developing the, additional marketing strategies to attract the groups of people that you really want to have in your organization. Okay, so this is how the system actually from a high-level perspective looks like. Now we've been talking, we have a lot of interest. So as I said in the beginning, there's no alliance here. So we provide this learnings, and now we are discussing with different customers on how to exploit this. We have interest from manufacturing and from banking, from telco. And I would just like to maybe say a few words on a telco case that we are working on. It's a customer of ours is trying to build a e-wallet, but not e-wallet just for the purpose of payments, but actually to have quite a huge amount of services that are hidden behind that wallet. So having public transportation services. So you could, have a card, have a mobile wallet which you would use to pay for public transportation. Then you have a mobile payment, so a real payment service. Something that they want to introduce into this is this multi-partner loyalty program. And that's what we are working actually. This is the most important part from us, because the way they want to start this is to have open DAMA as a base layer, and then once they start this new entity and they start to do multi-level loyalty program and all the transactions go into the system, the learnings from that loyalty system would actually be merged with the open data results, and we would get even more extensive knowledge of our population, and we would extend the open DAMA approach even further with this. Okay, some key takeaways. I've been thinking about what would be the best conclusions here. Maybe the first one is, even though there's a lot of big data or a lot of data out there, this doesn't mean that there's a value behind it. You really need to work hard on that to find the appropriate business model and to find appropriate strategy on how you want to extract measurable KPIs out of data. So before going into any data monetization project, either that be open or non-open data, you need to address a couple of points. So you need to get the support from top management. Without that support, you will not be successful in this project. You need to, of course, work on extracting potentials, so direct and indirect business potential. You need to work on the end-to-end process, so validate from a practical perspective Would the system be manageable? Is it legal? Is it ethic? Is it scalable? You need to pay a lot of attention to the privacy issues and regulation concerns. And at the end, you need to do your homework with due diligence. So you need to really see who you are working with and what the expectations on all sides are. So to conclude, maybe open data would be relevant to be included in such data monetization projects, or maybe you have a better way to go forward with this strategy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aleksander. Now we can proceed to the questions. I have a couple of questions here on the app. I hope it's okay firstly to ask this question, and then if somebody has a question to ask live, he or she can do it later. So the first question says, were you mixing data of competitors or companies in the first exercise with the 6 companies?
The data were, there was a slide on that. I might not have gone into details of that, but the competitors are sending anonymized data into the data platform that we're using. And then this data had to be merged. It was merged based on socio-demographic information. So that's where we had a lot of troubles, because the data quality on socio-demographic data is a bit of a problem in every organization. But the point is that all the partners within that alliance actually provided their data and sent the data to the system, anonymized data, which was then aggregated and combined in order to derive the hyper profiles.
Okay, the next question says, from where we can download OpenDMA dataset?
Well, open data is available out there in the, so there are portfolios. You can go to the statistical offices. Statistical offices have links to different data platforms. And there's also open data platforms that are being generated in different markets. So you can actually go to that portals and extract or download data from those sites. So that data is available for everyone to use, and it's not really so hard to find it if you are up to searching for it.
Okay. The next question says, how did you charge your 6 clients? Did you charge your clients in a success-based fee? Because you mentioned that one of them were not satisfied with the results. Or did you charge a flat fee to all of them based on their data amount?
Well, yeah, pricing is always an issue. So the agreement was that we do that project together with our leadership. So we were working on SaaS software, of course. So the pricing was more or less would be based or is based on the service that will later on be provided or is now provided by this legal entity. So that entity is actually responsible for the pricing. So it's based on usage and capability to sell that service to the landscape outside of that alliance.
Okay. Next question says, how it is regulated exchange of private client data between different companies in terms of GDPR and other regulations?
Yeah, so I mentioned GDPR. So whenever we collect data from a third-party organization, we never get any private data into our system. It's only about, anonymized data. So there's no way we can, based on the data that we collect, identify which individual is hidden behind a particular line or in that database. So no individual privacy data is shared with the system itself, ever.
Okay. Next question says, do you know if similar product exists in other markets like Serbia or Croatia?
No, it doesn't. At least I'm not aware of it.
Okay. How they could match anonymous data from 6 different companies and to get some useful conclusion from them?
Sorry, again?
Okay, I'll repeat, but I think this is not that clarified the question. If somebody hears this question, maybe that person can also clarify himself or herself. How they could match anonymous data from 6 different companies and to get some useful conclusion from them?
Yeah, so I said that this was a big challenge for us now, how to combine, how to do the record linkage between inputs coming from 6 totally different entities. So we started with, typically we start always with stuff that is already there, so socio-demographic data. As this data is typically not in the best condition, we also try to use parts of the data that are related to that particular business and try to see whether this business data can somehow be. So what we did is we did some aggregations on the level of groups, and then we tried to assess. So we use that aggregation on aggregation level. We try to aggregate or combine lists of people to a particular segment. So it's really not a trivial task, and we kind of fought a lot on doing that. So that's why we had a lot of struggles with actually implementing the first variation of DAMA.
Okay. I see no questions on the app. Do we have some questions from the audience? Somebody?
They used all the questions.
Okay, I see once again no questions also on the app. So I think that's it. Thank you very much for your time. Please give an applause for Mr. Aleksander. Thank you very much.